Let's start. Einstein. You ever read many of Einstein's quotes? He was fabulous, but his quotes almost have nothing to do with math at all. All of his good quotes are about the nature of humanity. And my favorite one, and I think the one that fits in with what you're doing and what we're doing better than any other, is this. Albert Einstein said, "We are all geniuses. But if you evaluate a fish on its ability to climb a tree, the fish will grow up thinking that it is stupid. Find the fish a lake and watch the genius of swimming." How many fish do you end up talking to who are being evaluated on their ability to climb a tree? And how precious is your ability to help find them that lake? The fact that your company believes that there is a place for everyone and everyone has value is a remarkable thing. And your ability to do this and make a living is so fortunate, I think, for everyone. How many feel that that is fortunate, that you can do both these things? It is so cool. How many of you consider yourselves to be involved with your coaching in the field of leadership? Right? Okay. I did something last night because I wanted the best numbers. I wanted the most recent numbers. So I went to Amazon and I typed in leadership. Has anyone ever done that? I typed in leadership. How many hits do you think I got? 250,000 hits for products, books, and paraphernalia, ugly, probably hats, I don't know. But 250,000. American industry this year will spend $25 billion on management leadership training. Global leadership is $50 billion. So I think it's safe to say the leadership is hot. But what I want you to know is, while it is hot, it is not new. It is old. The first recorded leadership training was in 343 BC. But it wasn't leadership training per se. I would call it fellowship training, because it was one trainer, one student, and this trainer believed that in order to be a great leader, you first must be a great follower. In order to decide what kind of leader you will be, you first must decide what kind of leader you want to follow. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so he taught the student what to look for in leadership. And here's what he said in 343 BC. He said what I call the 3 C's. He said the first thing you must look for in a leader is content. What's content? Well, it means they know something. You don't want to follow a leader who basically doesn't know anything. And in business, they put people in courses that go sometimes 2 and 3 years just to learn all the things they need to know about that business so they can be a leader. They know this stuff. Content. What's the next thing you want? Well, you want competence. Anyone ever know anyone that knew a lot of things but couldn't manage to do anything with the things that they knew? Yeah. So you have to have a leader that not only knows something, you have to have a leader who's competent enough to get something done. Say, well, here's what we need to do, and we can get it done. And the third one, and this is the one that is close to my heart, character. Character. But when you look at that $25 billion worth of leadership training, and I think everyone in leadership agrees that content is important, competence, vitally important. How How many years in a big company will someone in advanced leadership course just be studying strategies, allocations of resources, risk management in these things? Okay? What percentage of all this training do you think is devoted to character? I think some of you would be hard-pressed to tell me that you've ever seen a leadership course that really focused on character. Do they know how to teach it? I don't know. Do they know how to measure it? It's a conundrum. Do they recognize it when they see it? No. The only thing they seem to be able to do is recognize a lack of leadership when they see it. But then that's sort of like closing the barn door, isn't it? So we end up always with leaders who seem to lack character. Stephen King had a great quote about leadership. You wouldn't think he'd do that, but he had a great quote. They said to him one day when he was in a writing seminar, how do you come up with all these great ideas for all of these awful monsters you write about? And he laughed. And he said, do you read my books? And yeah, they were all fans, of course. And he said, well, if you read my books, you'll know that every single villain I've ever written about is the same villain. He said, what? He says, it's the same monster. He said, do you know what a monster is? No. He said, a monster is a leader that's a coward. Interesting. Could we test for coward? Can we observe coward? It's interesting. Anyway, one of the fascinating things on how important character is came from General Schwarzkopf, which I'm sure many of you know. And here's what Schwarzkopf said about leadership. He said, leadership is the dynamic synergy between strategy and character. Nice line. But then he went on to say, but if you have to lose one, lose the strategy. Imagine a general saying that. He said, character ultimately is the most important thing. Character. You know, there's one more thing a leader has to have, and that's a vision. A vision. You have a leader, and I think that this company has a remarkable vision. You can have the other three things, but with no vision, where are you going? So vision is pretty important. One thing that I don't know if you've like Henry David Thoreau. Anyone like Thoreau? I love Thoreau. Yeah, I don't even call him a philosopher because he was just so common sense. He's just like someone you'd have a beer with. I don't know if Thoreau would have a beer, but I don't know. But here's my favorite line. It has nothing to do with this talk. It's just my favorite Thoreau line. He says, beware any endeavor that requires the purchase of new clothes. I've tried to live by that. But here's a quote I want to give you. If you have built your castles in the air, do not despair, because that is where they belong. Now, build the foundation to the castle so that you might dwell in it. Now, we all have visions. We all have lofty goals. We all have castles in the air. But what makes a leader is not the vision. What makes the leader is the vision and the competence to build the foundations up to that castle. So not only that they might dwell in it, but everyone who is with them dwells in it as well. Well, leadership. My leader. Now, some people think I'm a leader, but you know what I'm really proud of? It's not any leading I've done. What I'm really proud of is the good following that I've done. And I want to tell you about two leaders that I've had. And you saw them in the trailer. The first one was my time in Vietnam. You see I have this hat. I know some people think I'm just, oh yeah, he wears a hat indoor. He wears it everywhere. He's just an old man, you know. And okay, that's true. But this hat's really special to me, and I'll tell you why. I gave a keynote address at the Vietnam Veterans of America conference. And after the talk, these women came up to me and said, "We would like you to come to the women's auxiliary lunch." Well, I'm not going to refuse a woman offering me food, so I said yes. But I didn't even know what the women's auxiliary was until I got there. And guess what? They are the wives and the daughters of the Vietnam veterans who have died of Agent Orange poisoning. And they wanted to have lunch because they knew that when I had a fairly significant voluntary appointment to the Department of Veteran Affairs, I was involved in the first look at Agent Orange and giving Agent Orange coverage to the veterans. And they wanted to thank me, and they gave me this hat. And they said, "Wear it always." And so I promised I would do that, and I try to do that. That's why I have the hat. I was in Denver once, and I was walking. I don't walk real well. I was walking between gates. I finally got to where I was going, and I sat down. And I looked up at this young man. He couldn't have been more than 20. He says, "Oh, I've been watching you." I said, "Okay." I followed you to where you were sitting down. And I thought, he needs to get a life. I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I saw your hat." And I said, "Okay." He said, "I just wanted to thank you." I said, "All right, you're welcome." And then he didn't leave. I thought he was going to leave. And he looked really uncomfortable, and he reached in his pocket, and he pulled out a $20 bill. He said, "I want you to have this." What do you do? Well, first of all, I don't need his $20. Anyone who's ever tried to hire me as a speaker knows that. But it was important for him to give me that $20, right? So I took it, and I said, "Thank you." And he said, "My brother died in Afghanistan." And I thought, "Oh, there it is." And I sat with him for a bit, and he left. And I've got a $20 bill, and I feel so guilty about it. I called my wife, and I said, "I'm in the Denver airport, and someone saw my hat, they just gave me $20. And my wife, who I depend on for support and love and caring, said, "You know, Richard, you just got to dress better when you travel." And I thought, "No, I got $20, you know, I don't know where that." Anyway, then I got nervous because I'm going to get on the plane. What if he's on the same plane that I am? I'm in first class, he's in coach, I've got his $20 bill. This seems wrong. But he wasn't on the plane. In Vietnam, you saw in the movie that people held back, and I raised my hand and said I wanted to be a hero. Not that I wanted to be a real hero, it's just I used to read Superman comics and pretend I was a hero. That story is an interesting one because we had 100 people on that hill, radio operators, engineers, people who really weren't combat soldiers. We were surrounded by about 800 to 1,000 North Vietnamese regulars. We were down to 2 days of water, 1 day of food. There was a fog around the hill. They couldn't bring helicopters in to get us. And the only way to get us out was to artillery one side of the hill, so the enemy would go to the left and right, and then have the 100 people go down that area where we did that and get away. But the problem is they said, "Well, we need 5 people to stay on the hill and make a lot of noise so the enemy doesn't know that the others are leaving. Otherwise they'll come in and flank them, so you need to close the back door." And my leader was my sergeant. He was with me through the Tet Offensive. He was a great man, oh my gosh. And he says, well, "We got to do it." And I said, "Why?" And he says, "Well," he says, "it's our responsibility." I said, "What do you mean it's my responsibility to die? It's a suicide mission." "Why is it my responsibility to die?" And he looked at me and he said, "I'm going to explain responsibility to you. He said responsibility is made up of two words. Response and ability. It has nothing to do with people telling you what to do and you having to do it. It has to do with what's inside you. He says, do we have the ability to hold the enemy off for enough time so that these men can get away? Do we have the ability to do that? And I said, yeah, we're really good. Is there anyone else on this hill that has the ability to do that? I said, not the radio operator. He says, well, that's our ability, isn't it? He said, now, what is your response to your ability? It has nothing to do with the people in charge telling you anything. Responsibility is your response to the abilities you have inside you in the situation that you're facing. I say, I'll stay. Well, it was a suicide mission, and we actually survived. We finally made it down the hill and we made it to base camp after a few days. They're having our funeral. And I don't know if you ever walked in on your own funeral. It's an interesting experience. And my gosh, my colonel, I don't know if you've ever had a supervisor like this, he came up, glad to see us. Ah! He came to me and said, Pimentel, you can't even get a suicide mission correct. But they gave us, they let us be in the beer bunker that night, drinking beer, and then they dropped rockets on, they didn't, but the enemy dropped rockets on the beer bunker. I mean, what are the odds? So I ended up deaf, I ended up with a traumatic brain injury, and I came back a disabled veteran. Who is my leader? That sergeant, who taught me in the most meaningful way that I could possibly be taught what the real meaning of responsibility is. It's not an external thing. It's an internal thing. Saw the pancake house and called the police. Art Honeyman was my best friend in the world. He had cerebral palsy. He had more cerebral palsy than Justin Bieber has, like, bad judgment. And I was the only one who could understand him because my hearing was so blown away and his speech was so distorted that they matched. And so I couldn't understand anybody, but I could understand him. And we became friends, and people would come up to him, and his name was Art Honeyman, and they go to Art and say, hey, Art, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And Art would go, like in his cerebral palsy, and then they turn to me and say, what did he say? And I'd tell them. Then they talk to me for a while, but I'm deaf. So I'd turn to Art and say, what did he say? And Art would tell me, we're the damnedest pair you ever saw in your life. And they wouldn't let us into a movie. Art and I went to the pancake house. It was his birthday. I had to push him 15 blocks, get him dressed, take him up the stairs, and the waitress came. Here's what she said. This is hard to take. Here's what she said. You're the most disgusting looking thing I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe that you're coming out in public and you're going to eat. You're going to make everyone sick. You want me to bring you food? How are you going to eat it? Like a pig in a trough? I don't want to serve you. Get out. And then she said, I thought people like you were supposed to die at birth. 1971, Portland, Oregon. I looked at my friend Art, my best friend Art. I thought this was going to crush him. He just laughed. He was a genius, but he was better than a genius. He was an evil genius. And he turned to me, and this is what he said. He said, Richard, why do you think she's talking to you that way? I go, she's not talking to me. She's talking to you. He said, there's only two of us here. How can you be sure? I think she wants me. I think she wants me to come home with her. I think she's trying to get rid of you. So we got an argument over which one she wanted to take home. This seemed to irritate her even more. And so she called the police, and the police came, and then I got to make a decision. He said, if you don't leave, you're going to jail. I spent all this time in college to get ready to go to work, to get a job. Oh my gosh. Back then, if you had been arrested, you couldn't get a job with a big American company. You couldn't, because they say, have you ever been arrested? And if you said yes, they don't interview you. But even, well, now, you get a job with a big American company, then you get arrested. But even if they interviewed me, they'd say, well, why were you arrested? I'd have to say, refusing to leave the International House of Pancakes. Do you know how hard it is for a fat guy to say something like that? What were they going to say? Was it buffet night, Mr. Pimentel? I wasn't going to get a job. So I'm going to throw all that away, all the work that I'd done. Because Art said, I want to go to jail. And then he said, Richard wants to go to jail too. I'm thinking, no, I know. But I could have left. I could have left. But here's what Art taught me. If it's worth doing, it's worth going to jail for. But more than Art taught me that, Henry David Thoreau taught me that. If they didn't want me to do civil disobedience, why did they have me read Thoreau? And here's what I know. Thoreau didn't just teach me that. He taught Gandhi that. You know who was a great influence? Who Thoreau was a great influence on? Martin Luther King. I talked to his son at a conference that we gave a few years ago in D.C. And he said Henry David Thoreau was a great influence on nonviolent civil disobedience on that. And I thought, well, and the other thing I thought is, I didn't go to Vietnam to protect people I don't know, to come back to find out the people that I care about have no rights. And the third thing I thought of, okay, this was not very intellectual. How are they going to fingerprint Art? I got to see this. This is worth going to jail for. So I said, I want to go to jail. And they obliged. Put us in jail. And they found us guilty of breaking what's called an ugly law. You can look it up, ugly law. At that time, in 1971, here's what the law was. In 23 cities in the United States, no one who's crippled, maimed, deformed, or otherwise an unsightly or improper person shall be out upon the public thoroughfare. 1971, United States, 23 cities. I was living in a disability apartheid, and no one cared. And I decided, well, as long as I'm not going to be employed anyway, why not? So I went to jail. Best decision I ever made. Bottom line, Art taught me that. I've had good leaders to follow. What is your genius? What is the genius of this company? Well, I believe in the day that I was here yesterday and the conference that I did, of all the things you do, and I'm very impressed with it, and I want to talk about how it relates to some of the things I think about, but this entire idea of the science of self, besides being one clever term, is much more than that. You know what I believe for you and your company the science of self is? I believe it is your corporate lake. And you will swim in it with your genius. And you will have the lake in many ways to yourself. Because you've got some ideas that are not just corporate ideas. You've got some ideas that are so important to the whole world. The entire idea of self is such a vital idea. The first thing you've seen, and I get to go around, I do these conferences, I see a lot of leadership, I see a lot of testing. When they first told me about your company, I had a cynical thing to say. I said, oh, what is this? Is it like a Myers-Briggs on steroids or something? I swear that's what they said. And he said, well, why were you cynical about that? Because so many of these surveys and testing and analysis that I've seen that go into companies, besides just being paper, are not to include people or to teach people how to respect and value people of difference. They're to exclude people. They are to put the sand in the little shaker and shake out the unwanted parts. And I've always been against that when I hear that you say everyone is valuable. I heard Bill say it like, how many times is that, well, why would, I don't want to do an impression if I don't do impressions. Okay? But he says, well, how would you like a company where everybody's the same? Does that make any sense? Well, here's what I say to that. You know, there has been a company where everyone is the same. And they were successful for quite a while. But then they became not successful. You say, you're talking about IBM in the 1950s? No, I'm talking about Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. The Oompa Loompas. Remember the Oompa Loompas? Anyone want a company with all Oompa Loompas in it? Guess what? Things didn't work out too well. Little children turned into giant blueberries. It was not a good idea. And neither is having all of your employees basically have the same style, the same behaviors, the same motivations. So what you've hit on is this wonderful idea of diversity. You're not there yet, but it's in your future. I can see it because eventually the end of where you go with this wonderful idea is we have companies that now that are understanding we value differences and diversity is vitally important. We know this with gender. We know this with race. We know this with ethnicity. We're trying to say we are better for having diversity. We are coming down to it now, and you can see it in America. We are coming down to a time where those who believe that that which makes us different makes us weak, and those who believe that that which makes us different makes us strong. At some point, we're going to have to decide which side of the line we're going to step on, because it's really that simple. I believe that you and your organization have decided to be on the correct side of that line. That which makes us different makes us stronger. You say, well, different characteristics and decision making and all of our charts, well, someday, will they be diversity? Will they be people that are valued in the same way that race and gender? And you know something? I believe so. I believe so. And someday we're going to look at that where we don't tolerate differences or have them in for a photo op, but we truly value the differences of people, saying, boy, we don't have one of those anal C's. We need to get one right away. You know? Okay, I'm you know my bias right there. But anyway, I apologize. Anyway, well, bottom line, someday that's going to be it. There's another interesting thing. Self is not just business. It's not just how you do in business. Self is life. And there are many people who don't have an employer who's going to pay anyone to give them the help that you can give them in knowing who they are. And it is so very vital. My heart is in those people who, as Oliver Wendell Holmes said, most people go to their graves with their music still inside. And he didn't say they go to their graves with their music still inside them because they couldn't find the music. And he didn't say they don't do it because they can't play the instrument of their music. You know what he said? He said they go to their graves with their music still inside them. Because somewhere along the line they've been taught that they have no music. And if they did, it wouldn't be worth hearing. So they don't look for it. We see that every day. When you talk to someone and work with them and show them the charts and talk, and you know what you're doing? You are helping validate that they have music. They will come to believe in themselves. How do you come to believe in yourself? There's only one way to believe in yourself. Someone first has to believe in you. There are a lot of people with disabilities that people don't believe in. There are a lot of minorities that people don't believe. And when you come against all this negativity, sociology has a word for it. You know, it's oppression, but not just from the outside. They call it internalized oppression, which means you believe all the bad things about you, so you become disliking yourself. Internalized oppression. You become your own worst enemy. You think that you don't have a self worthwhile. I work with students with disabilities, and here's what I tell them. You need to know who you are. Knowing yourself is the most important thing. And I say, how many of you have ever gone to a carnival? In fact, I'll do it with you. How many of you have ever gone to a carnival? Gone to a carnival? Who's ever gone to the fun house? Who's looked at the fun house mirrors? Are they fun?
Yeah.
Of course they're fun. They got ones that make you look like squat and fat and short and weird, like I have a really big head, and then they have them to make you look really thin. I got one of those at home, and they have them that just make you look like everything, and they're so fun. You laugh. You just laugh. You know why we can laugh when we see those mirrors? Because we know what we look like, and we know that they are a hilarious distortion of who we really are. But what if you did not know what you look like? What if you were not sure? What would you do when you saw that mirror? Oh my God, is this who I am? For many people with disabilities, they do it all the time. They don't do it at the fun house. They do it at the mall. They do it at the restaurants. They do it at the school. You say, where are the mirrors? The mirrors are in the faces and the eyes of those who see them. And there's only one defense against that. It's for them to know who they really are and to know what they really look like. Because there's a difference between what you have, a disability, and who you are. You deal so much with who you are. Lastly, there is a true genius, I believe, in your company. One of the genius that I see is the ability to understand that you hold a key to locks that don't have a pile of money behind the door, but they're still worth unlocking. And if you ever get a chance to do that, it's worthwhile. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am to know that you have a leader who just doesn't say that, but it is inculcated in his spirit. What is the real genius of your company? Well, I'm on thin ice here, but I got to tell you, I love what I'm seeing. The charts, looking at the stuff that I have, oh my gosh. But that is not the genius of your company. You are the genius of your company. Because you help people to believe in themselves. And there is no graph and no chart alone that will cause someone to believe in themselves. There is no graph or chart that believes in anyone. Only you. And that's where you have no competition. Because you are the people who believe. You don't just counsel. You believe in your people. And for every second that you believe in someone that you are coaching, they are one step closer to believing in themselves. And they develop the shell, the armor, the protection, the strength of self, knowing who yourself is. Self can't just help you move forward. Self can protect you against bullying in the workplace. Because bullies in the workplace don't attack you. They attack yourself. They want you to hate you. They want you to believe that it's your fault. They attack that. And if you have a sense of self, you're protected. Same way on the outside. Every moment that you believe in someone, they come closer to believing in themselves. And the science of self, I believe, is the greatest tool that I have seen to help my vision, which is that no one shall go to their grave with their music still inside them.